Hello and welcome to FL Studio Music Theory Primer video number 1. And in this video, we're going to be taking our first step in looking at some music theory basics. And I'm going to try to keep these videos short, about 10 to 20 minutes a piece, focused on specific topics. And that way, if there is a particular topic that you're confused about, you can look it up and check it out. And I want to make you also aware that you're going to see online some people say that you don't need music theory. And that is not accurate information. When you see something like that, most likely somebody is talking about music theory beyond the basics. How much music theory you need is debatable. But the basics means note lengths, note names, chords, scales. Those basics, you need that. And I just want to make you aware of that because I have posted beginner music theory videos in the past, and inevitably somebody's going to come on and say, well, you don't need that, just so we got that out of the way. And what we're going to be talking about here in this video are note lengths. And these music theory primers are going to be related to FL Studio. Okay, there's going to be some topics that are really specific to FL Studio too. And in fact, I'm going to be starting off with one topic that is specific to FL Studio, and that is the concept of a step. Now, in music theory, a step is often referred to as an adjacent note. This can get confusing because in FL Studio, a step is referred to as a note length. A step in FL Studio is a 16th note. So whenever you see anything referred to as a step within FL Studio, it's referring to a 16th note. And it's time-based. So here's a time-based knob where it says set. Here I can set my time to a 16th note by clicking one step here. Right? And that means I have an arpeggio moving in 16th note durations. So note lengths, that is one reason why note lengths are important to understand. If I wanted to set this to 8th notes, I would go 2 steps, 2 16th notes. We can do quarter notes here. We even have 3 steps, dotted 8th note. And it sounds a little off here. All right, actually, we have a dotted 8th note, and it gets cut off because of our time signature. All right, not to get too off topic here, but if I change my time base maybe to something like 6, let me see if that fixes it. And it does fix it, okay, whereas and I'll explain this when we talk about time signatures, but just to show you that in common time, when we set our time option here, right-clicking set, choosing 3 steps, when we have 4, we get cut off because 3 doesn't really divide into 4, so it sounds like an offbeat loop. But if we set it to something divisible by 3, like 6, it sounds smoother. And then, of course, we set to 4 steps, and then we get quarter note. So what is all this I'm talking about with 16th, 8th, quarter notes? Well, the step here, as I mentioned, in FL Studio is a 16th note. And if we go into the piano roll, by right-clicking and choose Send to Piano Roll, we can take a look and examine some of these note lengths in greater detail. One thing that is important when you're dealing with note lengths in FL Studio is understanding the PPQ. Let me quickly explain this. In your options here, you go General Settings and click on Project. You can adjust the resolution of your grid here. By default, your resolution is going to be 96. Take a look at the size of our blocks. They're smaller. Now, that I changed the PPQ to 96. If I go here and turn this to 192, we get much higher resolution. Having a higher resolution enables you to get a little more detail when you're working within the piano roll. I like working most of the time in a higher resolution, right? Just because with the default 96, the 16th note blocks are a little bit small. For hungry minds, explaining the time base here, in music applications, you have an option to change your time base, your resolution. It's variable. Don't know exactly why there's not a standard, but that's just the way it is, and you can have different kinds of resolutions in your time base. We have something here that says PPQ, and that means ticks per quarter, pulses per quarter. And to explain this, when you have your watch, it ticks 1 second at a time. In 1 minute, your watch goes through 60 ticks, 60 seconds per minute. In MIDI applications, we have a different kind of clock. Okay, we have a variable clock where you can have 24 ticks per quarter, or you can have 48 ticks per quarter. All right, generally, you're not going to want to go below a time base of 96 within FL Studio, and you're probably not going to want to go beyond 384. But depending on how much resolution you need, you can alter your time base. So that's just how it works. And this is important to understand because sometimes when you want very precise timing, especially if you're playing through live, where you want like a human kind of feel to your timing, having a higher PPQ like 192 is going to be a lot more accurate than having a PPQ of 96. Whereas having a PPQ like 24, your actual live recording is going to be a little off because this means that you have a resolution of 24 ticks per quarter note, which seems like a lot of resolution, but when you're playing live, you can have a lot of different kinds of timing in there. And also this affects your controllers too. So this is just the resolution, but having a resolution 192 ticks in a quarter note is more than enough resolution for nearly everything. Some people do like to go and do 384, but for me, 192 seems like a good resolution to work in. Now we have our 16th notes. This means that we have per bar 16 16th notes. A song is divided into bars, and for now we're going to stick to common time. We'll talk about time signatures in another tutorial, but for now, in common time, which most music is composed in common time, we have 16 notes per bar, and in FL Studio the bars are labeled numbered up here. They're divided into bars, and this is just a way to keep track of your song. In addition to 16th notes, 8th notes, and the 8th notes, we have 8 of them in a single bar. We have quarter notes, half notes, and whole notes. A half note means there's 2 of them in a bar, and a whole note spans across the entire bar. We also have rests. And a rest is the same thing, except a rest is a place that contains no note. So here we have 16th notes, drawing in 16th notes here, with 8th note rests. So if I had something maybe like this, we have a couple rests here, and these are going to be quarter note rests. We talked about the concept of a step being a 16th note. In music theory, there's something called a beat. And when somebody's trying to figure out maybe how many bars a particular loop sample is, you might hear them say, well, after counting the beats, I figured out this is a 4-bar loop. But what do they mean when they say they count the beats? When they count the beats they are counting are the quarter notes in common time. Don't want to get you too confused here, but there are times when you can change the beat to eighth notes with time signatures. For the most part, a beat is going to indicate quarter notes in common time. So we have quarter note beats. Our tempo indicates 140 beats per minute. So that means we have 140 quarter notes in every minute of music that we have. So let's see if this is actually true. We have 4 beats here in a single bar. So if we want 140 beats, we can divide our 4 beats into 140. And that will give us 35 bars. So let's move down here to bar 35. We can check our time here and take a look up here. Let's set our time here. You can change your time here if you ever want to see minutes. And we move to the end of bar 35 to bar 36 here. We're exactly at 1 minute. So that's 35 times 4, which is 140 beats per minute. So that's how beats per minute work. So whenever somebody's talking about a beat per minute, they're talking about quarter notes. Now let's take a look at some more uncommon note lengths. One is the dotted quarter. And it's called a dotted quarter because in music notation, a dotted quarter note is written with a quarter note symbol with a dot after it. And a dotted quarter note is a quarter note plus 1/2 its length. So this is a quarter note plus an eighth note. When you have a quarter note plus an eighth note, this is an undefined length. Okay, it's not a 16th, it's not an eighth, not a quarter, half. It's an undefined length, and so we call this a dotted quarter. We have dotted eighth notes, right? When we had 3 steps before, when I talked about how things were a little off, this is the 3 steps, 3 16th notes, but it's an eighth note plus a 16th note. And take a look at why it was off before. This is how it was looping when we set the time to 3 steps before. Going back here, if we set this to 6, okay, and come back here, notice our bar is extended and this fits right in here. And that's why it looped better when we changed our beats per bar. And this is beats per bar. So just understanding a little terminology helps you understand how things are working in FL Studio. We have 6 beats per bar. So what does that mean? It means we have 6 quarter notes per bar. Let's see if that's true. We go 1, 2, 3 quarter notes, and then you can see we have 6 quarter notes per bar. That's how that works. And when we come to time signatures, it's going to help us understand things a lot more clearer. Okay, and all this, I know it sounds like something you don't need to know, but believe me, you need to know these basic things. But I'm going to change this back to common time, which is 4 beats per bar, 4 fourths, and we'll talk about the other smaller note lengths that you might want to sequence. 90% of the time, you're not going to go below a resolution of a 16th note. But there are times when you might need to use 30-second notes, especially at slower tempos. For most techno trance music, you're not going to have to go below 16. You have a pretty high tempo. At lower tempos, though, you're going to find that you might need to start sequencing some 32nd, maybe even 64th notes. In order to do that, change your snap settings. We can change our snap settings to a half step. A half step, what does that mean? Well, a step is a 16th note, so a half step is a 32nd note. even smaller resolutions. These are very fast, short notes. And even beyond this here, you will see something like 1/3 step, which is a very odd time length, and then quarter step, which is a 64th note. Now something like a dotted 64th, dotted 32nd, you most likely won't even have to bother sequencing something like that. But 32nd and 64th notes are not as common, but there are times when you're going to have to go to that low resolution, and 64th notes are very fast. Now I'm going to switch back to line here. And in closing, just going to mention in our snap settings, you'll see the third steps, the sixth beats, third beats. When we get to time signatures, we'll cover those, right? But for now, I'm not going to cover anything but most common note lengths, which are 16th, 8th, quarter, half, whole notes. One more thing before we end this. Here I have an issue. Okay, I drew in a 64th note, and now when I want to put in a quarter note, my note lengths are going beyond a quarter. This is just how FL Studio behaves. Normally this behavior is helpful when you sequence, but in this case we can't resize the note. This can be a problem for you. There's multiple ways you can fix it. I'm going to show you an easy way to take care of this. All right, take the slice tool, make sure your snap settings are on a line, go here, slice off the end on the line, and then click on the note and draw it again. And then here, now we're drawing in quarter notes that are precisely sized. When you come across this, when it becomes a problem, you're going to find this very useful. Okay, this is just a very easy way to fix this. Another way you can do it is you can select the note, we go select here, and then you go tools, quick quantize, and that'll snap to the lines that are visible. And that method is good if you have a bunch of notes that you want to fix. And then from there, though, if you want to draw in quarter notes, you can click on that. Use the pencil tool, click on that, draw in. And here I'm drawing in eighth notes, right? But let's say I wanted to quickly go back and draw quarter notes. I can click on a quarter note and then draw a quarter note. Click on an eighth, draw an eighth note. Just some sequencing tips there for you. So that's going to be it for this tutorial. And in the next tutorial, we're going to talk about some pitch and scales.